हाय एवरीवन, दिस इज़ मानसी रतोड़ी। सो जैसे कि आप जानते हैं हम पॉलिटिकल थ्योरी सीरीज़ कर रहे थे जिसमें हमने काफ़ी सारे कॉन्सेप्ट क्लियर कर लिए हैं। सो आज के वीडियो में हम डिस्कस करने वाले हैं सिविल सोसाइटी के बारे में। सो विदाउट एनी फर्दर डू लेट्स गेट स्टार्टेड। सो फ्रेंड्स, आज का हमारा कॉन्सेप्ट है सिविल सोसाइटी का। देखिए, सिविल सोसाइटी जो कॉन्सेप्ट है वो सबसे पहले आया है यूरोप में 17th और 18th सेंचुरी में। देखिए, बहुत बार ऐसा होता है, हम न्यूज़पेपर में देखते हैं या टीवी प्रोग्राम में देखते हैं, कई चीज़ें देखते हैं कि सिविल सोसाइटी वर्ड आप सुनते हैं, राइट। आप न्यूज़पेपर में पढ़ते हैं कि कई बार ऐसा होता है कि सिविल सोसाइटी ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस सीएम को कई बार बोलते हैं कि जिसमें होमलेस बच्चों की प्रॉब्लम्स के बारे में बताया जाता है या कई और तरीके की प्रॉब्लम जो कि नागरिकों से जुड़ी होती है। इस तरीके के जो मुद्दे होते हैं वो सिविल सोसाइटी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन हैंडल करती है। अगर हम बात करें कनाडा की, कनाडा में 10 लाख से ज़्यादा सिविल सोसाइटी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन अभी वहाँ पर मौजूद हैं। और अगर हम बात करें अपने इंडिया की, इंडिया में 20 लाख से ज़्यादा सिविल सोसाइटी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन हैं। ओके, अब हमारे सामने कुछ क्वेश्चंस आते हैं कि सिविल सोसाइटी का मतलब होता क्या है, या ये किन चीज़ों या किस तरीके से ऑर्गेनाइजेशन से रिलेट करता है, या ये किन कामों की वजह से कुछ खास तरह के ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस को सिविल सोसाइटी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन क्यों कहा जाता है। तो हमारे सामने कुछ इस तरीके के क्वेश्चंस आते हैं। देखिए, जब हम बात करते हैं सिविल सोसाइटी की तो पॉलिटिकल थियरी की आपने कई कॉन्सेप्ट पढ़े होंगे, जिसका हिस्टोरिकली अगर हम देखा जाए तो सिविल सोसाइटी की मीनिंग को लेके कई तरीके के आर्ग्यूमेंट्स किए जाते हैं। कई फिलोसफर्स ऐसे हैं जो अलग अलग राय देते हैं और उनमें आपसी सहमति नहीं बन पाती, जिसकी वजह से क्या होता है, सिविल सोसाइटी की मीनिंग में चेंजेस आते रहते हैं। ओके, देखिए, जब हम बात करते हैं सिविल सोसाइटी की तो सिविल सोसाइटी पूरी सोशल लाइफ को डिस्क्राइब नहीं करता है। यहाँ ये बात समझने वाली है कि सिविल सोसाइटी सोशल लाइफ के एस्पेक्ट को डिस्क्राइब करता है, वो पूरी सोशल लाइफ को डिस्क्राइब नहीं करता है। ओके, देखिए, लुई ड्यूमो ने एक डेफिनेशन दी है सिविल सोसाइटी की। उन्होंने क्या कहा है कि जिसमें हमारा जन्म होता है, जिससे हम अपनी मर्जी से नहीं जुड़े होते हैं और जिसमें हम अपनी एजुकेशन लेते हैं और खुद का डेवलपमेंट करते हैं। तो इस तरीके से सोसाइटी सभी ऑब्जेक्टिव्स को पूरा करने वाली क्या है, एक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है। ठीक है, अब हम जॉन लॉक की व्यूज के थ्रू सिविल सोसाइटी कॉन्सेप्ट को समझेंगे। देखिए, जॉन लॉक सिविल सोसाइटी के कॉन्सेप्ट को स्टेट ऑफ नेचर से बहुत अलग मानते थे। क्यों? क्योंकि लॉक के अकॉर्डिंग स्टेट ऑफ नेचर एक ऐसी इमेजिनरी सिचुएशन है जिसमें ह्यूमंस जो है पॉलिटिकल या सिविल सोसाइटी के स्टैब्लिशमेंट के पहले रहते हैं। यानी कि वो बेसिकली क्या मानते थे, नेचुरल लॉज को मानते थे। देखिए, लॉक का क्या मानना था कि स्टेट का क्या काम है, स्टेट का काम है सिटीजन्स के राइट्स को प्रोटेक्ट करना। सिटीजन के राइट क्या थे, राइट टू लाइफ, राइट टू फ्रीडम, राइट टू प्रॉपर्टी। लॉक ने ह्यूमंस को सबसे ऊपर रखा है। लॉक का क्या मानना है कि ह्यूमंस में रैशनैलिटी होती है, सोचने समझने की पावर होती है, वो अपना अच्छा बुरा सब जानता है, तो स्टेट को उनके मामलों में इंटरफेयर नहीं करना चाहिए। स्टेट का क्या काम है, उनके जो नेचुरल राइट्स है उनको प्रोटेक्ट करना। राइट टू लाइफ, राइट टू लिबर्टी, राइट टू प्रॉपर्टी, इन तीनों राइट्स को प्रोटेक्ट करने का काम किसका है, स्टेट का। अगर नहीं कर पाते तो उन्होंने राइट दिया है अपने सिटीजन्स को क्या करने का, रिवॉल्यूशन करने का। ओके, now let's discuss everything in details. So guys, as you know, these days we often come across the term civil society in newspapers or in television programs or in a public meeting. For example, we read a newspaper report that a civil society organization submitted a memorandum to the Chief Minister of Delhi highlighting the problem of homeless children in the city. Or a newspaper report with information on a conference of civil society organizations that adopted a resolution demanding that a right to shelter be included in the constitution as a fundamental right. So there are other occasions when we confront the term civil society. Okay, it has been estimated that Canada has more than 1 million civil society organizations. Similarly, India is said to have around 2 million such organizations. So this brings us to the question, what does the term civil society mean? What does it refer to? Why are certain kinds of organizations performing certain functions referred to as civil society organization? What should an organization to be called a civil society organizations? So guys, like many other concepts of political theory, the meaning of the term civil society has undergone several changes in its history, and there is no consensus in the meaning of civil society among its contemporary users and proponents. However, one thing that is common to the various meanings of the term is the idea that social life is differentiated into various spheres and civil society is one among them. Civil society that describe an aspect of social life and not the whole of it. At the very outset, therefore, it must be clarified that the meaning of the term civil society is different from that of society in its contemporary usage. Whatever the specific connotations of that usage might be, civil society is one among many spheres of the larger society along with family, economy, politics, etc. So, civil society, on the other hand, can be understood as a collective entity that springs from society and exists for specific and limited purposes. The purposes, limits, and scope of the domain of civil society vary from one conception to another. Yet, there seems to exist, in the contemporary usage of the term civil society, some basic attributes of the latter on which of the differing conceptions tend to agree. What are these attributes? You know what? First, one of the most important attributes is that the domain of civil society is separate and independent from that of the state. Second, the domain of civil society is made up of voluntary associations and some involuntary associations, and groups in society such as family and caste are not part of it. But, as stated earlier, the contemporary meaning of the term civil society has a long history to which we now turn. Right? Do you get that what I'm trying to say? Now let's see the historical evolution of the idea of civil society. Basically, the idea of civil society evolved with the emergence of the modern age in Western Europe. As discussed earlier, the basic idea underlying the concept of civil society is the existence of differentiation in social life. This means that different institutions perform different functions in society according to the principle of functional specialization. Modern societies are more differentiated than the earlier societies, which results in clear separation of different spheres of family, economy, civil society, and state. So basically, pre-modern societies were less differentiated than modern ones in the sense that many functions were performed by one or a few institutions. Like in tribal societies, kinship performed many social, cultural, political, and economic functions. Similarly, in India, caste performed and in many areas still performs multiple social, political, and economic functions. In many other societies, monarchs performed multiple functions related to the economic, cultural, and political life of the members. At the same time, there were societies, the members of which thought themselves to be so fully integrated with the whole that they could not even imagine what it meant to stand in opposition to the matriarch or head of that particular society. The idea of differentiation of various spheres of social life, along with the idea of civil society, is connected to the story of modern Western political theory. Now, come to the next topic, which is John Locke's concept of civil society. So, basically, John Locke contrasts the concept of civil society with the state of nature. As you know, the state of nature, according to Locke, is a hypothetical condition of human beings prior to the foundation of political or civil society. Locke refers to it as the state of nature because, in the absence of any positive legal and political authority, the only force that guides human beings is the law of nature. In other words, it is a state all men are naturally in. According to Locke, in this condition, there is freedom and equality amongst the members of a species who share the same human nature. This condition is governed by the laws of nature that guide human beings regarding fundamental rules of right and wrong. All human beings have been endowed with the faculty of reason with which they can recognize and follow the law of nature. The state of nature is a condition of perfect freedom where man can live within the limits set by the law of nature. Everybody is independent of the will of the other. It is also a state of equality where no one has more rights than the other. Each man has the executive power of punishing the transgressor of the law of nature. So basically, Locke's state of nature is a peaceful condition of human living where rational and free men respect each other's freedom And gradually, due to some reason, men in the state of nature decide to get out of it and establish a civil society to get over the problem of the absence of any common judge to interpret the law of nature in specific situations. As stated earlier, each man in the state of nature has the executive power as far as the law of nature is concerned. But in the absence of a common judge, their judgments are fairly erratic and they are far from being impartial in their assessment of the rights and wrongs in conflicts between themselves and others. At some stage in history, according to John Locke, human societies grow to become richer and there is a division between people with considerable amount of property and those without, mainly because the invention of money makes the amassing of infinite amount of property possible. Right? With the emergence of a propertied class in society, the chances of potential conflicts among people in the state of nature become very high. So basically, in Locke's scheme, the concept of civil society also works as a standard with which to judge the existing political orders of his time. The main thrust of Locke's political philosophy is against the absolutism of political power. He did not approve of the existing absolutist monarchies prevailing at that time in France and other states of Europe. Locke was also critical of the monarch's monopoly of power in England and was in favor of constitutional monarchy. The concentration of power in one place, example in the hands of the monarch, placed the subjects in a condition of disadvantage. This arrangement did not provide the subjects with effective means of restraining the political authority and holding it responsible for its actions. Such a state, for Locke, is no better than the state of nature. It does not fulfill the requirements of a civil or political society. What we observe here is the normating charge or Locke's concept of civil society. Okay. In other words, Locke uses the concept of civil society to judge actually existing states. Already in Locke's political theory, one can observe the emergence of the idea of political authority that can be legitimately challenged if it tends to take a turn towards despotism and which fails to uphold the trust of the subjects. Right? With this idea begins the second stage of a story wherein the main emphasis is on questioning the state's monopoly of power. With Locke, political theory already adopts a critical posture toward the absolutism of the state. Historically, this was also a period when most of the European states were ruled by powerful monarchs. They were known as absolutist states. These states faced a further challenge from the political theories of the 18th century. So guys, let's come to the next topic, which is rise of political economy and the Enlightenment concept of civil society. So basically, the Enlightenment concept of civil society is closely linked to the emergence of the sphere of economy by the end of 18th century. In the wake of the Industrial Revolution, institutions of capitalist political economy had acquired a very important place in the social life of countries in Western Europe, particularly England and the US. One of the important features of capitalism was the establishment of an independent sphere of economy with the laws of its own. The term economy derived from the Greek word oikos, originally meant household management, but came to acquire a new meaning around this time. Right? In its new meaning, it referred to the intermediate sphere of commercial and production activities, spatially a situation between the family and the state. So economy, earlier confined to the private domain of the household, came out in the public sphere and sought independence from the domestic sphere as well as from state control. Unlike the earlier agriculture based feudal society, production in the new capitalist economy was fundamentally geared towards trade, commerce and exchange of goods in the market. The social functions of production, of distribution of things, employment of labor in production became privatized. In other words, these functions came to be performed more and more by non-political means under the legal condition of free, uncoerced exchange in the market. In contrast, the pre-modern practices, the distribution of various resources and labor in society did not take place by direction of political authority, hereditary duty, tradition or religious obligation, but through the mechanisms of free exchange in the open market. So, some thinkers of the Scottish Enlightenment, such as David Hume, Adam Smith, reflected on the significance of these developments and constructed theories about them. Smith developed his influential theory of political economy, in which he argued that the processes of economy are governed by laws of their own and must be kept free from the control of the state. He conceptualized the state as a laissez-faire state, with its function being restricted to law and order, defense, currency, and communication. Right? So basically, historically, the development of an independent economic sphere played an important role in the gradual emergence in new practices of politics, particularly the institutions of representative democracy. As a result of the gradual dominance of the capitalist economy, a new class of people was created that did not have any significant political role to play but was playing a leading role in the new economy and had acquired social prestige and wealth. So basically, a class of merchants, bankers, and businessmen. There were other sections of the middle strata working in the offices of the state, bureaucrats, and people involved in the legal profession that had gained social influence and prestige but resented the lack of any political role. These classes, collectively called bourgeois or bourgeois, played an increasingly important role in the politics of 18th and 19th century. However, they faced a peculiar historical predicament. Although they bore the financial burdens of the state, they were not allowed to participate in the political decision making, which was the monopoly of the monarchs and feudal classes. Right? With the spread of new ideas of freedom, equality, and the rule of law, the bourgeois opposed the claims of the absolutist state and called for limiting their powers. These were expressed in the form of various open and underground movement, created various public spaces, and took various forms such as clubs, coffee houses, saloons, library societies, and literally societies. Initially, all these spaces took the form of social entities without any overt political intention of challenging the established order. This way, they could provide the critique of the absolute order, thereby cutting the sinews of its legitimacy without posing any direct challenge to the existing power arrangement. Right? So basically, in the 19th century, the role of various public associations had a bulwark against the tyranny of the state and for the defense of the freedom of individuals were emphasized by Alex de Tocqueville in his book Democracy in America. Now, critics of the Enlightenment concept of civil society. In the 19th century, two powerful critics of the Enlightenment concept of civil society appeared in the philosophies of Hegel and Marx. They both are very important. As already discussed, civil society was seen as self-contained arena with internal laws and a mechanism of its own. So, thinkers of the Enlightenment placed their hope in the functioning of morality in the realm of civil society. The task of the state, on the other hand, was to maintain law and order from above. The individuals in the civil society were supposed to perform dual roles. They were individuals of a market economy trying to maximize their own self-interest. On the other hand, they were also supposed to play the role of citizens caring for the general interest of the whole society from time to time. So basically, both Hegel and Marx criticized the split between morality and legality and tried to overcome this opposition in their own ways. Now, come to the next topic, Hegel's concept of civil society, which is very important for your exam point of view. Like the 18th century Enlightenment thinkers, Hegel also conceptualized civil society as a sphere consisting of people involved in the market. Thus, civil society in Hegel's system comprised an economic system where formally free and equal individuals could engage in work and trade. Apart from that, it also included two civil institutions needed to keep such a system going. Institutions like markets, courts, and an administration of justice, and business corporations, obviously. Civil society for Hegel was a system of needs, where individuals pursued their freely chosen economic goals. It was also a system of mutual interdependence of individuals where exchange was the main medium of need fulfillment. The only thing about civil society that was problematic for Hegel was the Each individual was concerned with his own interest and no one cared about the whole. It was a sphere where individuals' particular interest plays. Critique of civil society and the role of the state. So basically, modern society, according to Hegel, is divided into three separate domains. First, family, second, civil society, and third one is state. The three institutions are organized on three different principles. In Hegel's formulation, family is the domain of private life based on love and trust, where there is no space for individual egos. In contrast, both civil society and state are spheres of individual public activities. Civil society is a sphere of pursuit of private or sectional interest in an open market. The state, on the other hand, makes its appearance in order to overcome the problems created by modern civil society, and its justification is based on Hegel's critique of civil or bourgeois society. Civil society, according to Hegel, is based on the principle of unrestrained individual egoism. Hence, it leads to hitherto unknown divisions that need to be overcome. The freedom available to individuals here is only partial. Now, contemporary revival of the concept of civil society. As already discussed in the beginning of this chapter, the revival of the concept of civil society took place in East European countries. The revival was related to people's struggle against the authoritarian communist states in some of the East European countries, particularly Poland. Against the dictatorial regime in Poland, people wanted to seek freedom under the state, so they started a movement named Solidarity, which invoked the model of civil society from the Western countries as an independent sphere of freedom against the state. So basically, similar movements started in other countries of the Eastern Europe, like Czechoslovakia and Hungary. So at about same time, the idea of civil society was also gaining prominence in Western Europe and the United States. Though due to entirely different reasons from the ones in Eastern Europe, the former were facing a crisis of political apathy and lack of political participation among citizens after World War II and a decline in the membership of political parties, trade unions and other voluntary associations. Similarly, the participation of citizens in elections had steadily declined, as was evident from low electoral turnouts in most Western countries. The notion of civil society was sought to be revived in order to resurrect the structures of civic solidarity among citizens. There was a marked emphasis on the role of voluntary associations in the new avatar of civil society, thus underscoring the contemporary relevance of Tocqueville's political thought. One of the important contributions to the contemporary revival of civil society in the West has been made by Robert Putnam. Putnam emphasized the Tocquevillian concern for the role the civil society associations played in the creation of solidarity among citizens. In his research, he showed that the quality of political life and the performance of political institutions are directly affected by the quality of civic engagement in a particular society. He also showed that democracies function better in regions where there are long-standing traditions of civil engagements that are defined by indicators such as voting, political participation, newspaper readership, and participation in various voluntary associations. He further argued that norms and values of civic engagement are found in communities with a substantial stock of social capital. Social capital refers to those features of social life that make coordinated and efficient social action possible. It also refers to social networks and the norms, reciprocity and trustworthiness that arise from interaction among individuals. Now, civil society in the post-colonial context. In third world countries, too, the concept of civil society was revived during the 1980s to 1990s. Soon after the concept of civil society acquired popularity in Europe, it was revived in many countries of the third world, particularly in the Latin American countries. Beginning the 1964 until the late of 1970s, many Latin American countries, including Brazil, Argentina, Peru, Chile, and Uruguay, came under authoritarian dictatorship. These regimes established political and economic domination by a tiny elite within the concerned countries. They also effectively excluded large masses of people from the process of decision making by banning elections and suppressing the rights and liberties of people that are a necessary condition for political participation. Okay, the challenge to the existing models of development appeared in the decades of the 1980s and 1990s in the form of new social movements. They were new in the sense that they carved out an oppositional political space, distinct from traditional political parties in the pressure groups. They were also new in the more important sense that many of these movements questioned the models of development that had been pursued by the developing countries. In India, we can think of the Narmada Bachao Andolan (NBA) and the Chipko movement as examples of such movements. The NBA, for example, questioned the sustainability of big development projects like the Sardar Sarovar Dam on the Narmada River on ecological grounds, and has also been struggling for the rights of the local people displaced by the dam. It also criticized the project for over centralization of the decision making structure, in which there was no participation of those directly affected by it. These and many such movements have created awareness about economic development through various traditionally non political channels and have been successful in changing public opinion to some extent. So, recently we have seen a spate of non governmental organizations funded by various international agencies taking up these issues. These organizations work in a wide range of important social area like education, health, human rights, ecological aspect of development, gender bias in the development of policies, rights of people affected by development projects, minority rights, and the transparency in governance. These organizations seek to stay aloof from party politics and use methods like public interest litigation, like PLS in courts, lobbying with political leaders and legislatures, campaigning in the mass media, and working directly with people. In the last decade, various NGOs and other independent organizations have got together to form a worldwide organization called the World Social Forum (WSF) to coordinate their agendas and activities. However, there are different ideological positions among different NGOs on important economic and political issues. For example, there is an important debate on the role of state in economic development and liberalization of economy. It is an important issue given by the fact that one of the important sources of support to the contemporary revival of the idea of civil society is the neoliberal economic doctrine. The neoliberal doctrine is supported by the World Trade Organization (WTO), the World Bank, and the International Monetary Fund (IMF). According to this doctrine, the old welfare functions of the state need to be dismantled and developmental work should be carried out by various civil society organizations. Okay. So guys, that's it for today. As you know, we have seen that the concept of civil society has undergone many changes in its meaning. The concept of civil society made its historical journey beginning with Locke's political theory, which is very important in the early modern age, went through various mutations in meaning by Enlightenment thinkers Hegel, Marx, Tocqueville and Gramsci until it was rediscovered as a useful category of social theory in the decades of the 1980s and 1990s. We have also observed that the current meaning attributed to civil society is a recent historical phenomena. In this conception, civil society is considered as one sphere among many in social life. In its current usage, the domain of civil society is clearly demarcated from the domain of state, and it consists of a network of voluntary associations. So far, there seems to be an agreement among the contemporary users of the concept, but there are considerable differences when we raise the question regarding the type of groups and associations that should be included within the scope of the concept. According to one view, civil society is to be located basically in the sphere of the economy. This view seeks to defend the freedoms available in the market economy against the encroachments by the state. Okay. So that's it for today. I hope you like this video. If you like this video, kindly hit the like button and do subscribe my YouTube channel for more videos. See you in the next video. Till then, bye bye. Take care.